Hello everyone. Today we are dealing with the chapter The Enemy from the book Vistas, chapter number 4. The author is Pearl S. Buck. The Enemy, the title. The word itself, the word enemy itself brings to our mind hatred, revenge, etc. The title of the chapter speaks about the background during the World War II. The political situation at that time made Japan and USA enemies with each other because they were at war with each other. And the whole story is about the concept of enemy, patriotism and war. Now what happens is, an American prisoner of war is washed ashore in a dying state near the house of the main character in the story, that is Dr. Sadao. He is found at the doorstep of this Japanese doctor, Dr. Sadao. Now the dilemma, the confusion that Dr. Sadao faces is whether he should save him as a doctor or hand him over to the army as a patriot. In other words, whether he should be following his professional duty or national duty. That is the question. The story begins with a description of Dr. Sadao's house. It talks about Dr. Sadao Hoki's childhood. The square stone house was set upon rocks well above a narrow beach that was outlined with bent pines. And when Dr. Sadao was a boy, he would climb the pines, watch the islands, and played along the coast. Regarding his education, at the age of 22 years, his father sent him to America. For 8 years, he studied surgery and medicine there. And when he returned, he had become a famous surgeon and a scientist. So, what the present situation is, as I've already told you, that the Japanese army is at war with the American army. But Dr. Sadao was not sent to the war. He was not sent to the war for fighting because for two reasons we can say. Because general might need him any time. Because general was being treated medically by Dr. Sadao. And for this possibility, Sadao was being kept in Japan. He was not sent abroad with the troops. Second reason is, he was perfecting a discovery that would render the wounds, the injuries entirely clean, completely clean. Let us know something about wife of Dr. Sadao. Her name is Hana. He had met her in America at the house of Professor Harley, and this lady is a pleasant, affectionate and a caring woman. She has a very good heart. And while we are introduced to his wife, Sadao is thinking of how nearly he had not gone to Professor Harley's house that night where he had met Hana, and how he would not have married to Hana if he had not gone there. And Dr. Sadao waited for her to marry in a traditional way unless and until Dr. Sadao's father was very sure of the fact that she was completely a Japanese before getting her married with Dr. Sadao. Now, as I have already talked about the dilemma, the confused state of mind of Dr. Sadao and his wife, they cannot take the person, the American prisoner of war, in their house because they are afraid that they will be called as traitors. They will be treated as traitors to the nation. And what other reasons are there for their confused situation, for their confused mind? The servants have threatened to leave the house because they think that Dr. Sadao and Hana have lived in America for such a long time now that they consider even the enemy Americans as their friends, and that is why they have kept him, the prisoner of war, in the house. So there is a clear conflict between Dr. Sadao's duty as a doctor and his duty as a true patriot. As I've already told you about two duties, a professional duty and a national duty. But finally, Dr. Sadao and Hana, the couple, decides to save the prisoner, and they stand firm. They did not move from their decision. They treated the prisoner with all respect and love, with all affection. Hana washed him and fed him, cleaned him, and even helped Dr. Sadao with the surgery upon the white prisoner of war. But because Dr. Sadao was quite afraid, so he informed to the general about the presence of the prisoner of war in the house, American prisoner of war in the house. He was informed, and what did the general do in return? The general offered to help Dr. Sadao. He said that he would send his private killers, private assassins, to get rid of this American prisoner of war. He suggested that these assassins would kill him and even remove the body of the prisoner quietly. So Dr. Sadao comes back relaxed. He feels that he will now finally get rid of this American prisoner of war. He waited for 3 nights continuously, but every morning he found the prisoner of war there in the room, quite healthy and quite well. No assassins turned up in the house, and he was getting impatient now, he was tired of waiting for the killers to come in the house. Finally, he decides he takes a bold decision to help this American prisoner of war escape from the house. What does he decide? Sadao decides to give the prisoner a boat, extra food, clothing, bottled water, and a flashlight, and covered his hair with a black cloth because he had blonde hair. Only the Americans had blonde hair. So, in order that he does not get recognized, Dr. Sadao even covers his hair with a black cloth. He gives him certain instructions as to how to escape from there. He tells him to take the boat to an uninhabited island where nobody lived. He even instructed him to wait until a Korean fishing boat came there near the island. Further instructions given to the prisoner of war by Dr. Sadao was that he had to flash the torch twice if he ran out of food and was still there, means he was still there on the island, the Korean fishing boat did not turn up, and told him to flash it only once if he was alright. Finally, the prisoner escaped with the help of Dr. Sadao after following his instructions. Now, after this escape, when Dr. Sadao goes to meet the general admits that he had failed in doing his duty towards his country, and he justifies his action by saying that it was due to his ill health and not due to lack of patriotism. And he feels that Dr. Sadao understands him when he says this. He says that he was suffering a good deal, and he thought of nothing but himself because of ill health. In other words, he felt that he could not do this national duty, because he was self-absorbed. And he clearly mentions it to Dr. Sadao that it was neither lack of patriotism nor the negligence or dereliction of duty on his part, because of which he did not take any action for the presence of the prisoner of war there in the house of Dr. Sadao. And he even tells Dr. Sadao that if anything is known to the people, if this matter comes out, if this news spreads, that even the general knew about the presence of the prisoner of war in Dr. Sadao's house, Dr. Sadao would help him in all ways. So this is his justification for his action. And finally, towards the end, Dr. Sadao recollects his days spent in USA. He reflects upon his action and all the people he remembers, and recalls all the people, all the American people he had met in his life. He talks about the professor of anatomy, the American professor of anatomy, who insisted upon being a good surgeon. And he also thought about the landlady, the American landlady, who had, after a lot of difficulty, after a lot of neglect on her part, she got ready, she got consented to shelter him in her miserable home. And finally, he recalls how this youthful, haggard face of this American prisoner of war haunted him for days because of the presence and the fear that they would be treated as traitors, both of them, the couple, Dr. Sadao and Hana. And though he understood that he had hatred for Americans because they were their enemy, because Japanese and Americans were at war with each other, but finally he asks himself as to why he could not kill that American prisoner of war. But he feels that humanity had overpowered his feelings. Now the answer to the whole story, to the confused state of mind of Dr. Sadao, is he did not kill that man because he was a doctor and he was taught to save lives, not to kill humans. And that is the story we needed to know. I hope you understood the overview of the story. This was kind of the value points and the summary of the story. In the next video, we would come up with another chapter, that is Indigo. Thank you. Take care.